Welcome back to another episode of Critically Incorrect, your weekly game podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, online here today with Charlie, if you wanted to say hi.
Hello.
Yeah, we are back with a new episode and quite a bit to talk about. This is probably going to be, essentially the E3 episode, since essentially we got some cool press conferences / shows that happened this week and some pretty cool gaming announcements. But yeah, with that being said, we always start off with what we've been playing, so Charlie, take it away.
Yeah, I haven't played too much this week. It was mainly just playing through just multiplayer stuff like I normally do. I'd say the main thing that I've put some time into would be Battlefield 2042. The new season did launch on Thursday, so I've played a decent chunk of the new map. And just been grinding through the pass just to unlock the couple new weapons and stuff. The new update's kind of cool. The map is really good. It's by far the best map in the game. It's got a lot better infantry combat, where you're not just getting spammed by helicopters and stuff. Just overall, it's got a lot better pacing compared to the other maps. Especially on Breakthrough, it's got some really cool linear gameplay on that one. So by far, easily the best map in the game. But that being said, it is the only map in the season. There's literally one map, two weapons, two vehicles, and then the battle pass, and that's it. So there really isn't a ton of content, which is a real shame. Although not surprising, I imagine EA have got the most bare bones team working on the update. Just so that most of them are working on whatever is the next Battlefield game at this point. So I imagine every season is only going to have one map and a couple new guns. I was kind of hoping for some more remade maps in Portal, like Metro or Wake Island or something would have been really cool to see, but nothing on the Portal side of things. I know they are planning to do a Portal update in the next few weeks, just adding some new features for people to make stuff, but nothing on new maps or anything, and none of the reworked maps are out yet. They're meant to be towards the end of the season, I think. So yeah, that's been the main thing. I did end up picking up The Quarry yesterday. I've only played about an hour of the game so far, so I haven't, played too much. I've done the first, I did the prologue and then the first chapter. It seems pretty cool so far. I'm definitely interested in the plot and stuff. The characters are quite quirky and interesting. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to pick it up or not. I was originally planning to play it with people from work, but that kind of fell through because a load of people are away during the week it comes out. And then also, it's been very difficult to get a copy of it in the UK. I don't really know why, but it's sold out everywhere on PS5. And I didn't want to buy it full price for £65 or whatever, so I just got it on CD keys for PC. So I've been playing it a bit on there. But other than that, that's about it. I think I've played a bit of Fortnite here and there. But yeah.
Nice, right on. I haven't played terribly much. I did finish my game that I've been talking about for the last few podcasts, so that went really well. Probably the most well-received project I've worked on. A lot of people were pretty addicted to it. I should get you to play it, Charlie. But yeah, people like that. I should post it on Twitter. I haven't posted it yet. Still thinking about adding stuff. Obviously, it's a movement / parkour based game. I should add some time trials or something. So I might still work on it a bit. But yeah, we finished that up, and people seem to like that. Besides that, I haven't played terribly much. I have played a bit of Fortnite, just as I usually do for social events with friends. And then, yeah, besides that, I haven't really played anything just yet. I've been mainly watching stuff. I watched Top Gun for the first time in the new one as well. Yeah, nothing yet, but I do have Elden Ring ready to go. Since I'm finally in summer, I'll probably go back to that a bit. And yeah, not sure if I'll pick up Horizon, not really in the mood for it. I feel like after I beat Elden Ring as well, I don't know if I'll go back to it, or if I will go to it. So we'll see if I end up playing Horizon this summer, but Elden Ring for sure is next on the list. So yeah. Anyways, in terms of releases this week, Charlie already hit on this, but The Quarry is out, so yeah. I have not picked it up, but I know Kim did, so I'm not sure if we're planning on playing it together or if, she's going to play it without me or something like that, but we'll figure that out. Yeah, if we don't play it together, I don't know if I'm going to buy it, just because it is $70, and I'm trying to save up for this trip to Europe, but yeah, I'll definitely have to go through it eventually, since people are saying it's really good and on Until Dawn's level, so that's really high praise. But anyways, we'll move on to the gaming news, and we're probably starting off with the biggest news story of the week, and that's the fact that Homeworld 3 has been delayed. So yeah, Homeworld 3, obviously, a very, very fabled classic game that people have been looking forward to, by Gearbox, published by Gearbox, right? Yeah, sadly it got delayed out of 2022. We knew it was now in development for quite some time now, but yeah, delayed. I'm obviously making a joke since anyone that saw the Gearbox showcase last year knows how many times that trailer played, that it became a meme. It played so many times that I still remember that name to this day. So yeah, Charlie, what are your thoughts on this devastating news?
It is truly devastating. It was a game I was very excited for. In all seriousness, though, I did actually see people on Twitter very upset about this news. So
Yeah.
clearly there is a fan base for this franchise. I know it is like an old like 90s franchise, so it's not one I've ever played. It's nice that I think the message said they're delaying it because they just want to make sure that developers aren't like crunching on it and that kind of thing. Um, but either way, it was just funny seeing it just because me and Brandon especially just made like an entire meme about it because it was just in between every single thing they would show that same 10-second clip of saying Homeworld 3 now in development as if it just gone in and out of development for the past 20 minutes or whatever. So, yeah, sad to see you, but I'm sure we won't miss it.
Anyways, another news story in terms of gaming is the fact that Duke Nukem is getting a movie. The cool part is this is actually being developed by the people that do the Cobra Kai show on Netflix. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty good fit. It seems like a weird fit at first, but they have that. Obviously, they like really adore the '80s, right? Because they're tackling the Karate Kid, essentially, quote unquote sequel, I guess. But yeah, just the tone and vibe of Cobra Kai, like I feel like Duke Nukem will be very easy for them to adapt. So I think that's really cool. Duke Nukem's not a game that I personally have like really played before in the past, but I'm very aware of it and the tone of that game and that series because I've had friends that have been really into it. But yeah, very very fitting. What do you think about that, Charlie?
Yeah, it was an interesting announcement. It's pretty cool that the Cobra Kai guys are behind it, because it's they literally only work on Cobra Kai, so it's cool to see them doing some other stuff. I imagine this is really far out because it sounded like it's just something that's just been put into production. So, yeah, I haven't played the games myself. I know of the games and, like you said, know the kind of tone that they go for with those. So I definitely think it could work. Yeah, interesting to see how that one turns out.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if that means like season 6 or 7 or whatever season this will affect of Cobra Kai. If that will be pushed back a bit, which I think is for the better, just because we're getting season 5 like super soon, right after season 4. I feel like if they start releasing seasons really quickly, that will become really saturated really quickly. So, uh, yeah, it's good to see them branching out besides Cobra Kai. Anyways, Dragon Age Absolution is an animated series that's going to be releasing on Netflix this December. So, yeah, I saw people talking about this on Twitter this week. I think this is a part of Netflix Geek Week thing. They had like a whole animation day, and I think this, alongside Cyberpunk, got some cool news. So, yeah, I personally have not seen the trailer, but I know a lot of people are going on about this on Twitter and saying it looked good. What are your thoughts on it, Charlie?
Yeah, I think it looked cool. I don't know if I'll watch it just because there's so much stuff on Netflix that I add to my list and never get around to. I mean, Castlevania is one that everyone goes on about, and I still haven't watched that. I think they announced like a new season of that coming out at some point. I think the Cyberpunk anime I'm definitely going to be watching. The trailer for that looks really good, and I think they said that's out in like September or October or something. Like that's out pretty soon. So that one I'm really looking forward to because that looked really cool. Um, Overall, Netflix seem to have a pretty good grasp on like animated stuff. They seem to do a lot of that at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising. I guess since we're talking about Netflix, the One Piece Netflix live action show got an update as well at Geek Week, so definitely go check that out. But yeah, as a fan of obviously the anime and manga, it looked really, really cool. Um, yeah, we got a lot of One Piece news. We'll talk about more of that at Summer Game Fest, and then also the creator decided to take a month break from the manga because he's preparing for the final saga. So yeah, it looks like One Piece is finally getting into the ending. Uh, yeah, Saga is obviously going to take a while, so we probably have like at least another 3 or 4 years of One Piece. But it makes sense given where the manga, because I'm currently reading the manga, where it ended. We're kind of like we have to get to the end of One Piece now, based on the events of what just happened. So very very exciting stuff. And yeah, he needs a break to like reorganize and get it like sharply down what he wants to tell, so it makes sense. Anyways, God of War Ragnarok has not shown off this week at all, but we did get some news regarding its release date, according to Jason Schreier from Bloomberg, and that's the fact that it's still, quote-unquote, slated for the end of this year, and particularly in November, as of, this week, right? So, obviously, video game development is very tentative, right? Things change on a dime, but currently, Jason Schreier says everyone that's, familiar with the project, that's currently working, first-hand knowledge, has said that it's still coming out this year at the end of the year in November, and that apparently they're planning on, announcing this release date at the end of this month, so whether that's a new trailer or a state of play, who knows? It depends on which one Sony chooses to do, but very, very exciting nonetheless. Obviously, God of War is probably my most anticipated game for the rest of this year. I don't really think there's a game that's going to beat that, just because people say like God of War is like mid or something like that, and like lately that's been like a really big discussion point or something like that, at least in like communities I'm involved in. But like I feel like people still forget that that's like one of the best games that came out on the PS4 generation. Even though I have faulted the game for sure, I'm definitely looking forward to Ragnarok. Very, very exciting. I probably should go back and play through the first one, probably on PC this summer, just so I'm like familiar with it going into Ragnarok again. But I couldn't personally be more excited. Like I'm definitely ready for this, and hopefully it continues to be on schedule for the end of this year. So yeah, Charlie, what'd you think about that?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm not getting my hopes up just because, like Jason said in the article, like that's what he's been hearing recently from people in the know, but that doesn't mean that, the people higher up in the company know that it's not going to come out in November and are just trying to keep the devs thinking that, because it's entirely possible.
It's true, but it's also like I think the rumors of it being delayed was by like retail stores, so it's like they wouldn't even be in the know from like higher up executives, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying like those rumors are true. I'm just saying like I wouldn't be surprised if it still got pushed back.
Yeah.
Just considering how like much they were trying to avoid the whole it's still coming this year when they've talked about the game, like on the anniversary and stuff, they were really avoiding saying that. Just because they didn't want to trap themselves in a corner, I don't think, because I don't think they want to speak about the game until they know for definite it's coming out, they have a date. Just because, I mean, what was it, Horizon, that had a date, didn't they announce that for like November last year, and then it got pushed back after they announced that date or something?
I have no idea.
I can't remember what date they gave it, but they announced the date, and then like a few weeks later they delayed it. So
has Horizon Forbidden West been delayed ever? I thought they only gave one release date and they hit it.
Yeah, they definitely delayed it. I think it was like maybe it was like January and they delayed it to March or something.
I'm looking this up.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if it gets delayed, but it'll be more internally rather than announcing a date and then pushing it back. I just think they'll do what they did with the first game, and they'll just wait until they know for sure they have a secure date, and then they'll speak about the game again. So whether that's end of this month, next month, whenever. As for where they'll announce it, I imagine they would announce like a dedicated God of War State of Play. Just because at this point, I think if they're doing like a big showcase, which I imagine they have to be, right, at some point, I'm guessing that's happening in September again, like it did last year, and that's probably a bit too late to announce the date. Maybe they do it there, but I would imagine it has its own thing before then.
So I looked it up, and Horizon was delayed from 2021 to February of 2022 just to avoid crunch. So probably like something similar we'll see with God of War if it does get delayed.
Yeah.
It just depends on how production goes until, the end of this year. I honestly think it's like 50-50 at this point. No one really knows, right? It's just how development comes along in the next few weeks to months. But if they're planning a release date at the end of this month, then they're probably committed to finishing it for the end of this year. But Sony's, they're not scared to delay games, so that doesn't even mean anything really. So only time will tell, really. But currently as it stands, we should expect it to be at the end of this year. And yeah. Anyways, Tom Henderson released an article earlier this week, I want to say, about Kojima Productions, and he said how he's working on a horror game called Overdosed. He kind of gave like a brief description. I know like Mama from Death Stranding is in this, the actress, not the character. And like at the end, there's like a jump scare that says "game over" or something like that. There's more details if you read his article. And then he pretty much followed up on Twitter saying that Kojima Productions like reached out to him to have him like remove the article, which he declined, obviously, because he's a journalist. So that kind of validates this announcement reporting from Tom Henderson. So yeah, Kojima potentially working on a horror game, Overdose. We'll talk about him a little bit later soon here at the Xbox Bethesda show, because he did make an appearance there. But yeah, very, very interesting stuff, and a very interesting week for Kojima in general. What'd you think about the description of this game, Overdose, Tyler? Or Charlie?
I was interested in it, but I think he said since then that it seems to be this is probably going to be the cloud related title that Kojima is meant to be working on. And because of that, it's probably more going to be like a narrative, like not necessarily like choice driven game, but like one of those kind of like walking sim type things. It's not really like a proper hands-on horror game or anything.
Like Death Stranding.
So yeah, I just don't think it's gonna be a gamey game. I think it's gonna be more like a movie interactive thing, which to be honest wouldn't surprise me coming from Kojima, because he's super into his movies and stuff, and he's wanted to do like films and stuff for a long time. So I imagine this would be a natural progression for him to do something like this. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in it. I think there were rumors a while back about it maybe being like an episodic thing, right? So how long we have to wait until we see this, I don't know. I imagine we see something next year would probably be my guess. But yeah, certainly interested in it, but it might not be, what I'm personally looking for from Kojima.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's safe to expect with Kojima is the unexpected, right? Like, he just does whatever he wants to do. So you just kind of have to like take a look at his projects, and if they interest you, pick it up. If not, don't bother. We saw that with Death Stranding. A lot of people like picked it up just because it's the creator of Metal Gear Solid, but very, very different game, obviously, and people just didn't expect that, and some people didn't like it, some people liked it. Yeah, definitely gonna see this next project will probably be controversial as well. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, just goes with the territory. Anyways, we'll jump into our first press conference / show, and that was Summer Game Fest. So I actually didn't end up watching this one. I talked about this last week on the podcast, but this happened like right as I was essentially, driving back from college. But I guess I'll go over like the brief announcements that I know. So, holy hell, Naughty Dog came out and showed off a lot. I don't know if this is at the end of the conference. I'm guessing this is how they ended the show. But essentially they had Druckmann come on stage, and they talked about the HBO show. They talked about Factions, which was really surprising. Of course they did this one as a show I wasn't watching. I could tell you, I was watching like the presentation that Neil Druckmann did, and as soon as they started talking about the multiplayer project, I was like freaking out. And like if that would have been live, I would have been, you're glad you're not in a VC with me. But yeah, very, very exciting. They teased a location, so essentially it's going to take place in SF. They gave more details, so essentially they kind of described it just like their job listings have said. It's like their most ambitious, standalone multiplayer project yet. Apparently they're doing a lot of cool stuff with the story in this one, which looks really cool. It looks to take place in SF, as I said. You can decipher the picture. I've had friends say that it looks like a battle royale, which I'd say they're not wrong, but we still kind of need more information, of course. Very, very interesting. Obviously, we won't get any more information until 2023. They said that. But that's kind of to be expected, I'd say. I didn't see this coming out at the end of the year. But definitely I hope it's like, first half of next year or something. But we'll see. Definitely looks to be very ambitious. They're kind of like talking about it like it's as big as one of their single player games. Like they even said like it's as big, like bigger, like as big as their single player games, if not bigger than like some of them, which is kind of crazy. It's a big statement to say. But yeah, that looked cool. HBO, they showed off like a new screenshot of Joel and Ellie, obviously as Pedro Pascal and Bella. So looks really, really cool. People have found like if you turn up the brightness, you could see a clicker there. And then they ended off with Last of Us Part 1 remake. So yeah, finally announced, coming out on my birthday, September 2nd, which is awesome. People are mixed on the trailer, and like I think the price is probably the point of discussion that most people are like really mad at, because it is $70. I talked about this earlier today with Charlie, but I was just like, I can understand why people don't want this remake to be made, because it is very, similar to Sony games that people make and doesn't need a remake. There's a lot more games that need a remake, but at the same time, Last of Us is like one of my favorite games of all time, so I'm not complaining, and I'll definitely rebuy this and play through it, especially if it has combat like Part 2. But yeah, that was all the Last of Us announcements, I'm pretty sure. Neil Druckmann did tease that he's working on like a game of his own, but the way he worded it and, the way that you probably should imagine is that this thing is far off, right? They have quite a few projects to release before then. But yeah, in terms of that, other gaming news, there wasn't like terribly much. I know they finally showed off some more of the Cuphead DLC. One Piece Odyssey was shown. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 showed off a mission that a lot of people liked that looked like the Clean House mission, I believe, from Modern Warfare. Yeah, I know Callisto Protocol got some gameplay, a lot of stuff we knew about, right? Charlie, what are like the other big highlights since you actually watched the full entire show?
Yeah. I'd say like the funniest moment of the whole thing was Goat Simulator. I don't know if you watched the trailer for that.
The Dead Island 2
Yeah.
trailer, right?
So
That was
so the
funny.
way like Jeff showed it, like started off the presentation for it was like teasing it as if it was Dead Island, to the point where even Tom Henderson thought it was, because he said he's gonna probably be doing an article about Dead Island 2 in the next couple of weeks because he's been hearing a lot of stuff. Um, so he assumed that's what this was. The trailer obviously completely mimics the original Dead Island 2 trailer, which was really funny. So that was a great little moment there. They're doing a really weird thing where, even though it's Goat Sim 2, they're calling it Goat Sim 3. Because they're skipping 2 for some reason. Neon White's coming out next week, which is a cool, like I would say kind of shadow drop, but we knew it was coming relatively soon because they put up pre-orders the other day and said it was coming in the next couple of weeks, basically. So yeah, that's cool. Also next week is TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which is coming from some of the guys who did Streets of Rage 4, which is a really good beat 'em up game. So I'm very much looking forward to that. As for other stuff, I saw that I was kind of into, obviously, Callisto Protocol. We knew that was going to be there. Looked great as always. Midnight Sun's got a new trailer and a release date, although that had already leaked, I think, a week or two ago.
That's
Just because
October.
retailers put up all the stuff. Yeah, October 7th. I was kind of hoping it would be a bit sooner than that, just because it's coming out right in the middle of everything. And I am looking forward to that game, but I feel like I'm probably not going to end up playing it that much just because there's going to be other stuff. I think Modern Warfare looked great, but it was a very long demo for not really much reason. Like, there was nothing in the demo that stood out to me that was like, oh, this looks amazing. Like, it just looked like Modern Warfare, which is fine. Like, I'm looking forward to the game, but I think they probably could have used a better mission to showcase the game. It was quite slow, and it was a very long demo with not much happening. I'm kind of like skimming through. Midnight Fight Express got a demo and a release date, which is like this arcadey like brawler game. It was
So they
announced that
playing
I
the demo.
think, yeah. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. I saw it at Gamescom last year, but I think it was announced before that. At some other showcases made by like one guy.
I was gonna say, yeah.
But it looks really cool. It's got a lot of like kung fu influence. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. The demo was really good. So that was another big highlight for me. I'm like scrolling through. I think that was mainly it. Obviously, the Last of Us stuff was cool. Finally, kind of seeing a tiny bit of the multiplayer stuff was nice. Although, to be honest, I kind of wish they hadn't shown anything. I would have rather they stayed quiet about it for a little bit longer and maybe showed it off at a PlayStation showcase rather than showing one bit of concept art and saying we'll have more to talk about next year. Because I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't really needed. I could have happily waited a bit longer and just not heard that info. But fair enough. They wanted to at least mention it, I guess. I'm kind of mixed on the remake. I think it looks pretty good. But I'm more wanting to see the gameplay. That's kind of where I'm like wanting to see the most changes, right? Like if it plays a lot like part 2, which I'm sure it will, that'll get me a bit more interested. I think the price point of $70 and £70 is a bit too much. I mean, I obviously love Last of Us and PlayStation stuff, so I'm gonna get it anyway. But like, yeah, I don't know. That price point's a bit high. Obviously, I've said previously, I think a much better way of doing it was if they were going to bundle it with a part 2 definitive director's cut or whatever, and then the multiplayer. Obviously, the multiplayer is not this year, so they couldn't really do that. But I still think, yeah, I think $70 for the whole thing is a bit too much. I think they should have bundled in part 2 with it or something. It would have made it a little bit easier to swallow, I think, for a lot of people. So, yeah, I think that's gonna be a bit tough for it. And yeah, the show, like, image of the show was cool. Obviously, we now know Troy and Ashley are going to be in the show in some form. They didn't say who they were going to be playing, whether they're new characters or existing. I've said on Twitter that I think they'll probably end up being like some of the doctors or something.
They said major roles, so I highly doubt it. I mean, the doctor would have a major role since it's Abby's dad, but like not.
Yeah, so I don't know. I did see some article was saying that Ashley's playing Ellie's mom,
right? I saw that too, but I didn't think that was confirmed.
Which would be interesting, but I don't know if they'd show her in the show because obviously we never see her in the games. So yeah, I don't know. Either way, I'm interested to see some of that. He did say there'll be more news on the show very soon. They did just wrap shooting, I think the day after Summer Game Fest, so on Friday was their last day of shooting. So they're all done now. It's, time to get editing on it and that kind of thing.
I've already solved who Troy Baker's gonna be. It's gonna be David. Nolan North played David in the game, and now Troy Baker's gonna be
I did see someone saying if he's gonna play David.
I think that could work because I feel like Troy could be like a very unsettled,
yeah,
it could work. But
I don't know. I think for me personally, I'd rather they weren't playing pretty major roles, but that's just because I feel like when I hear them, I'll just hear Joel and Ellie.
Yeah, but they already announced. I think Neil said they're playing significant roles. But
yeah, we'll see. I'm certainly interested to see what roles they play and stuff. Still, excited for the show. But other than that, I think that was most of the stuff I was interested in the showcase. There was a few bits here and there. Overall, my thoughts on it were kind of I thought there was some cool stuff, but it was very long and drawn out. I think it would have been a hell of a lot better if Jeff just hadn't announced a lot of it beforehand. I think that too much of the bigger stuff was already announced, like Callisto and Midnight Suns and even Gotham Knights to an extent, although the trailer was kind of pointless. It didn't really show anything new. Stuff like that, I feel like he probably should have just left as a secret and had it show up, and it would have been cooler to see. But I get it. He does have to, promote some of this stuff. I imagine it's in a lot of deals he makes that they have to advertise it beforehand because they want to guarantee that they're going to get lots of people tuning in. So I get it, but they did announce most of the bigger stuff beforehand. And then obviously Last of Us did leak a few hours before the show started, which was a shame. But yeah, overall, decent showcase. I think it was probably better than last year. But I don't know. It's tough to say. I'd say it's on similar levels, maybe a bit better. I just think Elden Ring was probably a bigger reveal for them last year than the Last of Us remake, personally. But yeah.
Yeah, I think last year I don't remember anything they announced besides the ending with Elden Ring. I remember that
they had Wonderlands, Evil Dead was shown off there. Okay. There's probably some other stuff. Those are the ones that stick out to me. But
gotcha. Yeah. First of all, it was cool to see Naughty Dog show up with a Jeff event because that hasn't happened since the PS3 era when they were like, "Oh, is that the Game Awards?" I mean, they were there with Uncharted 4. They showed off the Nadine cutscene with Nate, but they really haven't had a presence at anything Jeff related in ages. So it felt nostalgic to see them back. In terms of the multiplayer announcement, I could see why you didn't want to see anything. I definitely feel like my stance on the multiplayer hasn't changed since I've read the job listings, so I knew that this was an ambitious project and stuff like that. So I guess SF and that whole artwork and just the way they talked about it was more comforting. But you're right, they didn't really need to show off anything. Maybe it's just to let fans know that essentially that they're working on it, right? The way this came across was they were gonna do a blog post on 2 years after part 2 anyway, because they always talked about how this was the 2-year anniversary of part 2. So since they already had this information they're planning on revealing, maybe they just figured why not be at Summer Game Fest or something. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, besides that, I haven't watched the show, so I can't say if I was like disappointed or anything. But I could just say that like getting One Piece Odyssey and Factions, like that's good for me. But yeah, just super stoked to see more of that game next year. PSVR 2 and Factions too. It's gonna be a good 2023 for sure. Very very excited. But yeah, I definitely thought a lot of people like disappointed online, and a lot of people are saying that like this is like how we're feeling COVID now. Like apparently like COVID. I mean, we already knew COVID was mainly affecting like games that were in early production, because obviously during that like creativity phase and like you're still defining a game is like when like being in the office is kind of like the most important. So I guess we're kind of seeing that like yeah, 2022 doesn't really have terribly much for the end of this year really. Uh, Looks like 2023 will be where it's at, but yeah, still quiet on like Ubisoft and Nintendo. Those are like the two big companies that haven't really shown anything off in a while. So hopefully we'll hear from something of them soon. But yeah, with that being said, we still have two more shows to go through. This next one I'll let Charlie go over since he's the only one that watched it here. So yeah, Charlie, Devolver Digital, how was the showcase and what did they announce?
Yeah, the Devolver show was pretty small. I mean, they normally are anyway. They're kind of just, and they know that they're quite small, which is why they do their weird narrative things, right? This year's whole thing was like having like all these mergers going on, right? So they had this weird like robot that was made by Suda51, who was like trying to take over the world or something. I don't really know. I wasn't really paying attention to it, to be honest. It was kind of weird.
Making fun
Um,
of like acquisitions and stuff.
Basically, yeah. I really want, because they had Suda51 here. I thought that he was going to announce like a new game or something. But he didn't, which was a shame. They just had him there as an actor, basically. Um, but they had four games here. So one of them we already knew about, which was Cult of the Lamb. This is a game I think they showed off last year. It's kind of like a mix of Binding of Isaac and then like a town management kind of game. It's coming out on the 11th of August to basically every platform. There's a demo out now on PC as well. I saw a lot of people really excited for this one. It's not one I've really looked into too much, so I don't know if it's one I'll pick up. But the other three games were ones that I'm super into. Two of them are ones that I kind of already knew about. So the first of these is Angerfoot, which is being done by the devs behind Gorn, which is like a VR game, as well as was it Broforce as well. So they've done a couple of like really weird, super like gory action games. This is like a first person esque Hotline Miami type game. You're basically running through rooms, kicking people, which is why it's called Angerfoot. But then you also have like guns and stuff with like some really like heavy EDM, like heavy music. Again, that's got a demo on PC, so you can try that one out. I think that one's next year. But that one looked really cool. And then the other one that was like most exciting for me was a game called Skate Story. Which I've been following on Twitter for probably the past like year and a half. But it got officially announced here as like being published by Devolver. It's like this weird skating game. The way they described it was that you play as a demon, I think made of glass and pain. And you're trying to escape the underworld was the was the kind of like premise of the game. But it's all about just skating through these levels and stuff, and if you mess up because you're made of glass or whatever, you like get destroyed. But visually it looked really cool. I'm really into skating games, so that's why I've been following that one for a while. That's also next year. Cult of the Lamb was the only game they had this year at the showcase, which again is another one of those things where it clearly shows a lot of these games, had trouble getting into that pre-production phase, with a lot of it being next year. Next year is clearly going to be pretty big for stuff. And then the final one was like a new announcement called The Plucky Squire, which if you haven't seen it, definitely go and watch the trailer because it was really cool. It starts off with like looking at this like kids book kind of thing of like this little like knight dude basically running through levels and like attacking enemies and stuff. I was like, okay, it looks interesting. And then it basically turns out that the character finds out that he's in a book, and he jumps out of the book onto this desk, and it turns in from like a 2D hand drawn thing to like he's in 3D. But it kind of looks like Link or Link to the Past, Link Between Worlds, where he's like jumping into objects. So he's like in a mug and like fighting stuff in the artwork on the mug, and then he's doing normal 3D platforming stuff. So that one looks really cool and unique. Again, that's next year as well. I think that one's like PC, and then next gen and Switch. So that was all the stuff for Devolver. Overall, like they didn't have much, but what they did have was really cool. And then they've spaced it out with that weird like weird comedy stuff they do in between, which is always fun to watch. But Devolver always have pretty strong games, so I thought the showcase was pretty good.
And Devolver and Annapurna are both like probably my favorite publishers, I'd say, for PC games and just indie games in general. So that's cool to see. I'll definitely have to watch that. I still want to go through and watch that, just for the humor and obviously the trailers, right? So very, very cool. Anyways, we'll end off on the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. We literally just watched this earlier today, just a few hours ago. And I'd say Charlie and I was like, I maybe slightly disappointed. I wasn't like terribly disappointed because like my like impressions or like I guess expectations weren't terribly high for this event. But I guess I'll just go through like some of the highlights here. So that first of all started with Redfall. We got some cool gameplay. It sadly looks a little bit more like just like a random like zombie shooter. Just like replace the models of zombies with like flying vampires. That's still coming out next year, obviously by Bethesda. Published wise at least. They showed off Hollow Knight Silksong, but they only showed off new gameplay and they didn't show off a release date, which was like such a kick in the balls in my opinion. Like I think Charlie and I both agreed, like for a game that has been notoriously like anticipated for like a release date update, you don't want to show off this game and not show off a release date. So I'm sure tons of people are very excited that we got more gameplay, but probably just as many just still pissed that we didn't get a release date after all that. So yeah, it's cool to see, but also just like, come on, not probably just hold off on showing it until you're ready to show off a date. High on Life is a game that's from the creators of Rick and Morty. This game looks really annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Which is kind of the whole entire point, I guess. A lot of these games are supposed to be like that, but like in this one, you literally have like a model, like a face talking, coming out of your gun. So yeah, that one's called High on Life, and it's coming out, I believe, later this year. That was kind of surprising, but yeah. Riot's coming out with a lot of releases on PC. I know Charlie and I were kind of like surprised by this. Like every single like champion in League of Legends is going to be unlocked, and Valorant's going to have like all the agents unlocked, and you know, applies for like essentially all of Riot's games. So yeah, that's pretty big for PC, I imagine. A Plague Tale got a new trailer, still coming out, I believe 2023. I want to say maybe it's the end of this year.
No, it's this year.
This year, okay, cool. No release date, I'm guessing. Maybe just end of this year. Forza obviously is coming out end of this year. They had like a really weird, like weirdly long segment showcasing like patches of grass and like rivers, but the game looks beautiful as always, so I'm sure that game will be cool. Flight Simulator, it's its 40th anniversary. They showed off like a cool new expansion with like Halo, which looks pretty cool. Do you know what the first part of that trailer was? Like, did they announce anything?
I think it was like helicopters and stuff.
Helicopters, okay. So that looked pretty cool. I definitely want to get into that game at some point, but we were talking about this during the press conference or the show, and I'm just like, you know, it's 100 gigabytes. That's the only thing holding me off. Overwatch 2 announced a new, like, what do they call them? Legends? Champions?
Hero, I think.
Hero, okay. Yeah, it's like this junkyard queen. Kim seemed to know about it since she knows the lore of it, but yeah, that's cool. Aura, History Untold. This is a game that looked a lot like Humanity. We all thought it was Humanity until the very end, but it's another one of those like world builder, like civilization like games. Fallout 76 got a trailer for the Pit. Forza Horizon 5 got a Hot Wheels expansion coming out next month. Arc 2 got like a meaningless trailer that just showed off Vin Diesel again, so yeah, that exists. Scorn got another trailer coming out later this year for, I believe. What was the whole point of this trailer? Was it the console release? Is that what it is?
What, Arc 2? I think it was just more... Oh, Scorn, sorry. It was the release date.
Okay. Because I remember that being talked about as like a launch title, so I guess that got delayed for quite a bit of time. This next game is actually probably like one of my highlights from the show, and that was Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn. This game looked really, really cool animation-wise. It was a cool like third-person action adventure game. Yeah, you know, early 2023. Just looked really, really cool, honestly. It was a really cool showing. I was surprised it was just shoved in the middle, just because I thought it was like one of the more promising trailers. Microsoft Legends was shown off. This is like a Minecraft. Action strategy game. Yeah, from the creators of Minecraft. It was a brilliant opening to that trailer. But that looked interesting. Light Your Frontier. This was a game we were talking about that looked like Titanfall 3 at first, but it's like a farming simulator. Yeah, interesting. Gunfire Reborn. I think this was a game that Charlie said it was already like shown off and already released on PC or something. So yeah, just a Game Pass announcement. This next game looks pretty cool. I think Charlie and I really like this one. The Last Case of Benedict Fox. This was like a really cool game that looked kind of like Gotham at first. We were kind of making jokes, but then once he entered the house and it turned into like a 2D Ori style game, just looked artistically really beautiful. Coming out spring of 2023. As Dusk Falls looked interesting if you're into like interactive, like, you know, narrative driven games. I think the art style doesn't personally do it for me, just because Charlie kind of nailed it best while we were watching it. But it's like the whole entire scene moves like it normally would, but the characters are like very what would you say, very delayed, or, you know, they like probably like process or update like once every like 8 or 20 frames or something like that. So it's a very interesting direction, but yeah, personally not it for me. Naraka Bladepoint got like a new Game Pass update for like June 23rd. Pentiment was a game by Obsidian that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. I thought this was like another indie game that's coming to Game Pass, but it's being made by Obsidian. Yeah, it doesn't look good to me. For, I don't know, personally, I didn't really like the art style, but it's a very different take. I gotta say that. Yeah, very, very. That was probably like one of the more surprising games, especially since it's from Obsidian. I didn't think Xbox would like have them working on that 2D role-playing game, but yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think reading about that one on Twitter, I think it's a team of like 6 people. It's like a really small team. I think it's the one being led by Josh Sawyer, who's like one of the main like narrative people who did like Fallout New Vegas and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it's like the main guy behind that stuff that's doing this.
It's cool to see a AAA studio like greenlight like a small project like that. That's cool. Yeah. Erebin Shadow Legacy looked really cool. Yeah. Not sure about the shadow traversal mechanics, but like the combat looks pretty cool, at least like the stealth. Grounded got like a full release for September 2022, so it's finally leaving like early access. Diablo 4 got the Necromancer reveal, and they also showed off some new gameplay that looked really cool. Sea of Thieves had like a really pointless trailer that was just singing why you should play the game. Yeah, nothing really of note there, but Sea of Thieves kind of like shows up every year, right? Ravenlock was a turn-based action adventure game. I'm trying to remember which one this was. Yeah, I'm looking for the trailer here.
I think it was like the pixel art looking one.
Yeah, it was the one that kind of looked like Lego kind of inspired world. That looked cool, I guess. Art style was pretty cool. But yeah, Cocoon was a indie game for that. Was, I think they teased it as like the creator, for like one of the creators from Inside and Limbo, and I was like, oh shit, we're finally getting Playdead. But no, this is a separate game being published by Annapurna. It looks like a really cool puzzle game. Had a really cool effect of like a world, but like a world within a world. They used that effect a lot in the trailer. But yeah, that looks pretty cool. Obviously, it's a puzzle game, so you kind of really can't tell until you play it. Wolong got like a new trailer, which was really cool. It's just kind of like a cool Japanese commitment move by, you know, Phil Spencer and the team at Xbox. And then probably the most surprising announcement here was the fact that Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal are coming to Xbox and Windows. Yeah, very, very surprising. For me, I think the most surprising part was Persona 5 Royal. I don't know, like Persona 4 Golden I could see since it came to PC and it's been like a long time, and to a certain point, Persona 3 Portable. But I was very surprised that Persona 5 Royal was coming to Xbox, just because obviously that's notoriously like a PlayStation thing. The thing about Atlus is they're just a weird company in general that like these things aren't really exclusive to PlayStation. They just like choose to only develop for PlayStation. And it's like the same thing for Shin Megami Tensei. Like, there's not really a reason that SMT5 needs to only be on Switch. They just choose to, you know, develop it on Switch. So, yeah, very, very surprising announcement. I think a lot of people are mad that these aren't also announced for PC, but Atlus just doesn't like money.
They are coming to PC as well.
Well, they're coming to Windows, but they're not coming like Steam or anything like that. So,
well,
I don't know.
I'd imagine they are. Like, if they're coming to
so?
Windows, like via the Xbox store, they're probably going to be on Steam as well.
I think they might have. I'll have to look into that further, but I know like people in Eniba were saying that it's not coming to PC or something like that. But I'll look into that afterwards. but nonetheless, still very surprising. I guess technically now Persona's like Xbox is the best place to play Persona, which is really wild. Being an Atlas fan is hard. You're just kind of have to own every single console, I guess. But yeah, another surprising news story, but probably not as surprising since we had rumors, for like the last year. And that's the fact that Xbox Game Studios and Kojima Productions are partnering to create a video game. They didn't announce what game this is. It could be the game that we talked about earlier on this episode, Overdosed. But they just announced that they're working on a game with a cloud. And it probably is the same game, but they didn't confirm it technically. So, yeah. And then they ended off with Starfield. We finally got a gameplay reveal of Starfield. And I don't know, man. I mean, Bethesda games just aren't it for me. But I was kind of underwhelmed with Starfield. I don't know, like I was a big fan of No Man's Sky when that like got good, right? And I know how that game plays, and I just see the same thing with Starfield. Like people are gonna going crazy online that there's like 100 planets and 100 galaxies or systems and 1,000 planets, and I don't know. Everything that they showed off in the trailer, besides like the cool settlements, looked kind of dead. There are some really cool parts that I liked about Starfield, though. Just to be balanced, like I like the whole ship customization, the you know combat in the air looked really cool, even though that looked exactly like No Man's Sky air combat. Same with like mining for resources and some of the UI elements. But besides that, like they did improve the game quite a bit with like the facial like look of the NPCs at least. Frame rate, as in Bethesda tradition, was very low. I don't know. I could just tell this game won't be for me, but there are parts of it that looked really cool. So, yeah. Charlie, what are your thoughts on everything? You can kind of just give your thoughts on the highlights for you personally. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for me, there wasn't a ton of highlights in the show, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to this one going in. I think a lot of people were really thinking this was going to be the big event this year. Um, and I think the main reason why I was so let down is because they focused on the next 12 months, right? So it's got to be stuff that's coming out by June, July next year. And I think a lot of the big games from Xbox in general from their first party is going to be past that, just because it's all stuff that's gone into development relatively recently in the past few years, and so a lot of it's probably not ready until the end of next year, early 2024. So most of the stuff I was more interested in myself is not going to be here. I was kind of hoping we'd see like some kind of reveal from like if it was like Quake or something, but obviously that's not next year, so that was going to be too soon. Something from Machine Games would have been cool, because I imagine Indiana Jones isn't the only thing they're working on, so seeing something from them would have been nice. I think Redfall looked okay, but like Brandon said, it did feel kind of generic, like a generic co-op shooter just with vampires. I think some of the abilities and stuff look kind of interesting, and I'm definitely going to play it because I love arcane stuff. There's obviously something weird going on with that game because obviously that was originally slated for summer this year and got pushed back alongside why am I just going blank Starfield to next year. So that's probably like what, spring next year I'd say. So that's going to be like a 9-month delay at least. So clearly there was a lot of work they needed doing on that game. But it looked okay. I think the most like interesting thing for me personally is probably High on Life, just because I enjoy Rick and Morty. I'm a big fan of Squanch games. I really like Trover Saves the Universe. Although it was very basic gameplay wise, I thought it was quite funny and the narrative was silly and fun. This looks like it's going to have more of that, typical just constantly having a character being annoying and talking to you and stuff, right? With all these guns, with all the weird voices. I think all the character designs looked really weird and cool. And then obviously, I think they said it's out in like October. So, yeah, that one I'm really looking forward to. I think the Riot Game stuff was a very big deal. Like just having all this stuff through with Game Pass is kind of crazy. Like all the champions unlocked in League. Like I've played League for over 1,000 hours and I've got nowhere near all the champions. Just because it takes ages unless you put money on to unlock a lot of them. So that's kind of a big deal. And then that's for all their games, including Wild Rift on mobile, which only came out last year. So that's going to be a lot of champs. I don't know if this will include like all future champs as well. just because obviously every like few months, every 3 months or so, they release a new one. So I don't know if this will be, because they said like winter this year, whether it will be every time a new one comes out as well, you get it free. I imagine so, right? But they didn't really say. Plague Tale looked cool, although it looked a bit crappy on the stream, just because the stream quality wasn't great. No release date was kind of weird. So yeah, Overwatch. Yeah, it was Overwatch. Like I don't know. I think the thing with Overwatch for me is I played the recent tests and it just felt like one just with some reworks, and I get that's kind of what the multiplayer is. But considering it's been in development for so long, I think there's something weird must have happened on the dev team, man. Like unless they had everyone working on that co-op mode, which I highly doubt. Something weird was going on there, and I'm more looking forward to the co-op, but obviously that's not going to be there at launch. That's probably going to be sometime next year. So that one I'm kind of like on. And then, like you, I think Flintlock looked kind of cool. Apparently that was already announced, like a previous event or something. This was just the first like gameplay reveal. I'd never heard of it, so but it looks cool. So I'm interested in that one. Minecraft Legends looked interesting because I thought this was going to be like an RTS was the rumor, but they say it's like an action strategy game. So interested to see what that's going to be. And yeah, that was about it for me, to be honest. I guess my thoughts on Starfield. I think the way they started the demo was really weak. I think me and Brandon both agreed. They started on a really bland planet, right? Like the old moon. There was just not much visually going on there. But the next location they went to looked a lot nicer, and having the flight combat and showing off, you can make your own bases and customize your own ship and that kind of thing. So I think it looks very ambitious, but to me, it's probably going to have the same issues that No Man's Sky did when it first came out, which is you have all these planets to go to, but a lot of them look like they're not going to have much to do, right? Like, it's cool you have this entire solar system that you can fly around, but if there's only one little town you can go to, and then there's, hours and hours of just empty space, like, what's the point, right? Like, there might be some resources you can collect, and you could put a base there, but it's not like it's multiplayer, so it's not like you can visit the bases with your friends or anything. You're just building it there because, like, I don't know. Starfield's one of those. I will play it because, it's going to be on Game Pass. But the thing is with that kind of game is I'm not going to be interested in it for all that, like, you can do what you want to do kind of stuff. I want to experience a cool story in the world, and not Xbox, sorry, but Bethesda Game Studios haven't really done like a good story in a long time for me personally. I think Oblivion was the last one that I really enjoyed, because New Vegas was great, but obviously that was Obsidian that did the story for that, and I really didn't like the story for like Fallout 4, so I'm not too hopeful for it, but that's the narrative is the one thing that I would want to be looking forward to with this game, and I just don't think it's gonna do that for me personally. But hopefully it's really good, but I think it's gonna be kind of overhyped, but that's everything Bethesda. So but other than that, there wasn't really too much. Kojima being there was cool, but obviously we'd heard for a long time that he was probably doing something with Xbox, and then with the whole Overdosed leak earlier in the week, it was kind of made sense that he would show up here. So it's cool that he's working with them, but the fact they didn't show anything was kind of disappointing. Also weird because they did say the showcase was mainly going to be the next 12 months, and then they had Kojima here. So, and I imagine that's not within the next year.
They're like Nintendo, so, they'll say that and they'll like lie at the end and just show off everything they want.
So I don't know. I thought it was decent, but to be honest, from all the showcases this year, I don't think any of them have been really strong. And like we were saying, I just think that's mainly down to the fact that the pandemic did hit a lot of these games really hard that were in early stages of development. And so I think next year will be where we see a lot of releases start to hit, right? Like a lot of stuff is slated for early to mid next year. And I think we'll start to see a lot more announcements probably next year, a lot newer stuff that we haven't seen before. I just think the next thing we'll have to wait for now is PlayStation, whatever they're going to do. because they've got a few things, right, that they can show off. And honestly, I just want a showcase that I'm going to be hyped for, because there hasn't really been that for me at all this summer. There hasn't been an event that I've sat down and gone, wow, that was really cool. There was loads of games there that I'm hyped for. So I kind of hope PlayStation do something like that in September or something, because I want like an event to be excited for again. But
yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I'm really glad I got into game dev because I have not been as excited for like these conferences as I used to be, and I just been focusing on like my own progress, and that happened to be the part where like PlayStation just decided to go almost like a whole year without like a showcase, so that was a good timing. Yeah, like you, I could see why this was disappointing because I don't think there was like really that many highlights of like new game announcements or like any big updates on games that like we really care about. I'm trying to think about like the future like lineup, and a lot of the games I'm looking forward to are like Nintendo, I guess, and obviously God of War and some stuff from PlayStation, right? Yeah, it just depends on when they decide to show off their next event or like direct. Yeah, Metroid Prime, Breath of the Wild 2. Still, hopefully we'll get something sometime soon, but yeah, they're all wild cards. Yeah, I definitely, like in the past, I've always felt like E3 hasn't been dead, but I feel like now more than ever, I feel like E3's dead just because, sure, we have Summer Game Fest and like a lot of third parties are showing stuff like traditionally in June, but without like no EA, really, no Ubisoft, no Nintendo, and Sony kinda has some stuff, but they kinda just gave Jeff whatever they had, and like maybe we'll get an update at God of War at the end of this month. So it does really feel like E3's gone now. But yeah, I'm sure just gotta be patient. We'll get some cool stuff in September, hopefully. PSVR 2 have to show off something more in the fall because you got to release that headset in the spring of next year. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's been quite a drought.
I was gonna say, I think it'd be interesting to see what Summer Game Fest do next year as well, right? Like Jeff said at the end of the show that they're going to be returning next year for a showcase and in person. Obviously, as people would have probably seen on Twitter, he did like a very small event for press and stuff over the weekend, which was cool to just see them doing in person stuff again. What they do next year will be interesting. I know Jeff said on Twitter that whilst they don't have solid plans right now, they would like to do something globally, which I think would be a really cool thing to do, so that you have, Summer Game Fest locations all around the world, right? You could have one in LA, some in London, or like in other parts of Europe and stuff. I think that'd be a really cool way of doing it, just so that, you can have your showcase and then have some of the bigger announcements from that showcase playable at the event. Just for everyone, I think it would be a really cool thing to do. I know E3 have said that they're going to be back next year. Whether they actually will, I don't know. I think it'd be really funny if Jeff just books out the LA Convention Center. Just that E3 can't be there. Like, he doesn't do anything with it. Yeah, he doesn't do anything with it. He just books it out, just out of like sheer pettiness. But no, I think next year will be really interesting to see what he does with that in-person stuff. I think next year, though, it will probably just be a bigger version of what he did here, and it will mainly be press again. But who knows? He's still got like he does 3 events a year now, which is kind of crazy, right?
This man, I didn't even realize he was on top of like hosting the show and like getting everything ready for the show. He's also working on like an in-person event. That's crazy. How does this man like function?
Yeah, I know. Like, he just never has time off. I mean, he sounds like he just never plays anything anymore because he's just doing all these events, right? Like, he's got Gamescom in, 2 months, so, we'll have at least one more showcase this summer. And then obviously the Game Awards in December. So I think the largest gap he has between showcases is like less than 6 months. And then he has a break because he's constantly trying to get trailers and stuff for these events. And then now planning in-person stuff. Like, yeah, there ain't no rest for Jeff Keighley.
Jesus, yeah, that's crazy. But yeah. Anyways, I guess that's it for this week's podcast. Make sure to give your thoughts in the comment section down below and announcements that you guys were excited for. And yeah, of course, that being said, we'll see you next week for episode 72. In the meantime, take care.
See you later.